A former British soldier has been found guilty of passing sensitive information to Iran. Prosecutors in London say Daniel Abed Khalife gave the names of Special Forces personnel to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard. He claimed he was working for British intelligence as a double agent and had been inspired by the TV series Homeland. Last year, he escaped from prison and was on the run for 3 days. The judge says he now faces a long jail sentence. Well, Professor Anthony Glees is a leading expert on European affairs and a former director of the Centre for Security and Intelligence Studies in the UK. Welcome to DW, Professor Lees. Let's start with your thoughts on today's verdict.
Well, it's very depressing. It's very depressing that Iran should be mounting intelligence operations here in the United Kingdom. We're told that this was one of 20 plots by Iranian intelligence and the Revolutionary Guards in recent years. It's very depressing that our security service, MI5, failed to get hold of this person. I mean, Khalife was uncovered through his own foolishness. He wrote to MI5 and indeed he wrote to MI6. And I think serious questions will have to be asked about why, knowing that Iranian Revolutionary Guards and Iranian intelligence are running plots in the United Kingdom, we seem not to have been able to get somebody like Daniel Khalife. And thirdly, I think it is depressing, perhaps not that surprising, that a fantasist, and Khalife clearly was a fantasist, should be able to do the job that he was recruited to do and work in the highly sensitive field of signals intelligence. So that is depressing. And the fact that Khalife was a fantasist should not mean that we assume that what he was doing wasn't dangerous.
Right, let's talk about that. How damaging was the information that he passed to Iran?
Well, we're told that he passed information of a highly sensitive nature, including the names of people who worked in two elite, highly secret military bodies, the Special Air Squadron and the Special Boat Squadron. And it would be extremely useful for the Iranians to have the names of these people, not least to try to recruit them too. These are people who do undercover operations, sub rosa, without anybody knowing about them. So this is a very bad thing. Yes, he had this information.
You've described
he
this.
Also, of course, had information about signals intelligence, the job he was doing. So he had that information too.
You've described this as very depressing that Iranian secret services should be effectively at large in Britain. My understanding is this fantasist contacted them and contacted the UK intelligence. So there's a lot of embarrassment to go round here, isn't there?
There's a lot of embarrassment. And, you know, our intelligence services recruit people on the basis of James Bond movies. So they're particularly pitching towards people who would like to be a James Bond. And it does appear to be the case that was what was at the back of Khalife's mind, that he could be, you know, this super agent and do all kinds of things, fast cars, fast women, and so on. And it shows that people need to understand that the work of intelligence gathering, the work of secret communications, the work done by people like the Special Boat Squadron or the Special Air Services, that is really important, particularly at a time now when Europe is under threat of a conventional attack at some future stage.
Right.
Rather than a nuclear conflagration.
And so as we have this fantasist claiming to be a double agent and inspired by the TV show Homeland, and as you were saying, British secret intelligence using James Bond as a pitch to people to join them, is that actually doing more harm than good, do you think?
Well, it's certainly not doing any good. Yes, I think it is. I mean, those of us who study the work of intelligence and secret agencies know that at its best, it is second to none in the world, but that the work it does is very, very serious. And our signals intelligence corps, and that's where Khalife, he went to work for them as a very young man before he was even 18 years old. They obviously didn't carry out proper vetting. Now, we know his mother was Iranian, and in one sense, that's a positive thing because he could speak the language. But in another sense, add the Fantasies to the links to Iran, and you've got a no-no. And British intelligence really does need to rise to the challenge of a growing and threatening environment here in Europe. It doesn't do so with James Bond.
Thanks so much for joining us, Professor Anthony Glees. Thank you so much.
Margaret Gilmore is a UK-based national security analyst. Welcome to DW, Ms. Gilmore. Now, what is your reaction, first off, to this verdict?
Not surprised, and I think he will get a very long sentence. He was very amateurish in a way in what he did, but he had a very big ego. He clearly was very bright, very intelligent, had a very big brain, but morally questionable. He called himself a patriot, but he wanted to be a double agent. Well, that doesn't quite stick together. So I think that in that he was very dangerous. In the end, he was planning, he had already handed over some stuff to Iran. He was planning to leave and go to Iran, where he wanted to be a double agent. So I'm not surprised. And I think this is what he was likely to get because of the way our judicial system works, but also will send a strong message to anyone else who wants to play a similar game, if you like.
How damaging was the information he passed on to Iran?
Well, we're given the impression that a lot of it was probably not damaging at all. On the other hand, he had access to things like pictures of people working for our special forces, and he gave the names of those people, photographs with names on them. So he is giving out very personal information about people who are working undercover a lot of the time. So that could be very, very damaging. We don't have a lot of the detail about what else was handed over, but it may be that they don't know exactly what else was handed over. But this young man had been trained, for example, in Texas, in America, where the US and the UK were doing joint training on a new military communication system. So he had access to technology like that, information which maybe the Iranians would find quite interesting.
Mm-hmm. Now, while he was awaiting trial, Daniel Khalife broke out of prison. It was a huge story back then. To what extent could the long custodial sentence that the judge has promised now also be a punishment for embarrassing British authorities rather than for any actual harm done?
I think it will be for harm done. I don't think it will be for embarrassing British authorities. You're absolutely right. Because he had gone absent without leave from his army barracks, because he was constantly phoning up MI5, our security service, and asking them if he could be a double agent. They got worried about him. They got the police onto him, and he was then caught. They may have just said, "Okay, well, let's just do an investigation, and we'll let you be out on bail in the community." But no, they were worried about him, so they put him in jail. And while he was in jail, waiting while the investigation went on, waiting for the investigation to complete the trial, he got a job in the kitchen, and he used a pair of kitchen trousers to put under a sling, and he's escaped in literally underneath a van that was delivering food and that type of thing, and made his getaway that way. And so that's really what brought him to prominence. His case wasn't that well known here until you had this incredible prison break from one of the toughest jails, Wandsworth, in the UK. And he got away with it for quite a long time. He lived rough, and eventually he was captured, and that's why he came to the fore. So there is a bit of comical side to it, but in reality, what he was doing could potentially be dangerous. He could have put his colleagues' lives at risk, and I think that is what the sentence will be. And we have to remember, in the UK, the judicial system, the judges, they are not political appointments, as happens in America. They are appointed independently.
And I want to talk to you about something else that has made this case a little more bizarre, maybe. He says that he's been inspired by the TV series Homeland and that he was actually working as a double agent. Now, do these types of programs give a wrong impression of what it means to work as a spy?
Well, they certainly glamorized it. I mean, I thought Homeland was a tremendous program. I absolutely loved it. I was hooked on it. I think they make the people out to be interesting people, very glamorous. They're obviously played by film stars. They behave the key characters are always so important, and they're in a lot of cases revered by the goodies or the baddies. So I think the way people are portrayed is very glamorous. But on the other hand, I do a lot of research and I give a lot of talks about some of the type of projects and the type of investigations that our security services have been through, and sometimes absolutely, spy fiction and reality. You can hardly tell the difference. So I think, I'm not a psychologist. Clearly, he wanted to be glamorous. He wanted to be a James Bond. I think there's a lot more that's very, very tough behind the scenes, very tough and very dangerous. But I think he was more swayed by those programs. But I don't think that is any excuse to not make such programs.
Margaret Gilmore, UK-based national security analyst. So great to get your insights. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.